I'm either writing my own story or somebody else is writing it for me. Like, do you want to be the one writing the narrative, or do you want to be living somebody else's? The simple reality is, if you aren't making those decisions consciously, then somebody else is telling your story.
Mhm. Mhm.
I want to be the one that's driving the ship.
Love
I
it.
want to be the one that is deciding where we are going and next. And there's a duality to that. There's dichotomies in every part of life and business. But do you need to be aware and consciously making those decisions? Yes. And then one of the dichotomies is you have to surrender to what happens next. You know, Tony teaches a process called RPM, result,
Mhm.
purpose, outcome. Start with the outcome. What is the end result that you want? Then move back to the why. Why is this important to me? And then you move on to how. Most people try to start with how before they've clearly defined what they want and why it's important to them. And then what happens? They get stuck in the tyranny of how. You got to know what you want and why you want. I mean, the simple reality is, if you don't know what you want, you don't have a
Mhm.
clear target and destination, you don't know what you want in a relationship, what's an absolute must and what you will not tolerate, how are you ever going to find a great relationship? You're
Mhm.
leaving everything to chance or falling to somebody else's narrative. So you got to get clear in every part of life. What do I want? What is the best, most intimate, incredible relationship look like for you? What does a phenomenal career look like for you? What does
Mhm.
outstanding health look like for you? What is a deep integrated connection with my creator look like for you? I mean, you have to. What does it mean to be a great parent for you? Do you want to be a parent? And there's no judgment. It's really just defining the things that you want. Because if you don't have clear targets and things that you are aspiring toward, then how the hell are you ever going to get there?
Hey yo, what's up everybody? Welcome back to Brainwashed To Be Broke series. Today's guest is a sales assassin known as the sales and persuasion strategist with over 150 million in personal sales under his belt. Ooh. He's been a top speaker and consultant for legends like Tony Robbins, and now he is building his high-performing sales teams that don't just close, but they crushing it. Super cool. Super excited to have him here. Welcome to the show, Zac Palmer. What's up, brother?
Hey, Adam, thanks for having me today.
So cool. Really excited about this conversation. We had a pretty cool conversation actually before we jump
Mhm.
in, I would say, even though I've been talking to most of the time, but now it's going to be your turn, right?
Yeah.
So pumped to have you here. Really love to hear more about you and how did you get into entrepreneurship and so on. So, well, let's start with the first, like open ending question, I would say.
Mhm.
Like, if you could introduce yourself, let us know more about like how did you get into entrepreneurship, kind of like I would love to like, and all the listeners would love to hear like when was the time or what was the spot where actually like having that shift for you that you realize that this is not the path of like my life that I want to live, and I have to shift and change everything because like, entrepreneurship is a completely different world when it comes to that. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Brevity's never been a strong suit, and with the depth of that question or those two questions, I'll try to do my best to be concise. But um, I took over a family business when I was 19 years old, and
Wow.
the business wasn't in the fitness industry. It was a specialty fitness retail store, so we sold both home and commercial fitness equipment, and we were one of, I think, only two facilities in the nation that was duly licensed to sell both, either focus on one or the other. And what I didn't know at the time was the company was only doing about $300,000 a year in gross revenue and was
Mm-hmm.
about $800,000 in debt. So
Wow.
with no formal business schooling, no real education, mentorship, training, anything, I had to figure out a way to make it work. And for the first 2 years, I actually doubled the business year over year. And that was 2005 to 2007. In 2007, I moved, expanded, and diversified to incorporate boutique personal training studios. My mind went best of both worlds. We have the product, the usage side, and then how to help people utilize it and actually get better results. So that became that fusion. And then 2008 happened. Carpet gets pulled out from under you, revenue drops in half, and thankfully, actually, the decision to diversify the business ended up saving it in many ways. But it marked a long and tenuous journey. I mean, there was a lot of ups and downs, a lot of figuring out stuff on my own, and not a lot of resources. I didn't have a lot of money or other things to invest into other experts, so I literally had to become the expert in multiple marketing channels and in sales and product development, and the list goes on.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember at some point I started looking into, who else could I learn from?
Uh-huh.
I had hired a lot of people, and for various marketing agencies or somebody to develop websites or whatever. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, more often than not, actually in just about every case, they didn't produce what they said they would produce as far as the end results. And that became a major turning point because to me, it meant I had to figure this stuff out on my own. Like I mentioned
Mhm.
earlier, I took my education to extreme lengths, but I still felt there was a better way.
Mhm.
And I remember stumbling on this ad for this guy, Tony Robbins. I'm like, man, he's got this big head, big teeth. Like he's like 6'7", right? I'm like, who is this guy? And through a series of events, I ended up going and making an investment to go to one of his programs, Business Mastery. Now, for me at this time, what you have to understand was that was a $10,000 investment. And that was a terrifying investment. It was the
Mhm.
biggest investment I had made in myself or the business to date. And this is
Mhm.
probably 7, 8 years in. And it's not something tangible. It's not like I'm walking away with a finished website or a marketing funnel
Mhm.
or new products for inventory or whatever. I mean, I'm going to learn and I'm being told that if you apply this stuff, you'll get great outcomes, but you don't know. But there was some part of me that knew I had to make this decision.
Mhm.
And my family was not supportive. I should highlight that actually to the point where I didn't tell my dad and I took out a personal loan so I could go to the event. But after I did, it was such a transformative experience that I signed up for everything that he did thereafter. And I grew the business from anywhere from 20 to 50% year after year. And so, I mean, it really transformed my mindset in business, what it meant, leadership, and every single context. And I continued to invest tremendous amounts into self-education ever since. And part of that's also proximity, surrounding yourself with other brilliant people that have done the things that you haven't, or maybe at least yet. And it was a 17-year journey. In the beginning, I was in love and enamored with the health and wellness industry. I mean, I loved anything fitness. I took my education to extreme lengths. I thought that was the best way to become a business person was be the biggest, best expert, but it really doesn't help you thrive in business. But through all that time and exposure, I actually my passion started to shift, and I started to fall more in love with business
Mhm.
as a whole. And I still have a tremendous passion for health and wellness. I mean, it's a core tenet and value in my life. I believe that our health is a foundation to all of our life experiences. If you don't have the energy to be able to do the things that you want to do, if you're in constant pain all of the time, and that's a whole nother story I could dive into. I had back surgery when I was 20 and a bunch of stuff. It
Wow.
it completely, it will take away, detract from your ability to experience life at its fullest. So
Mhm.
while that passion's still there, the love for business is the thing that started to evolve.
Mhm.
And through a series of events, I was the short version is selected to be on a speaking team for Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi. Then the world shut down.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
asked me to stand as a coach. I was a coach kind of flying behind the scenes for about a 2 year period, although I was the number one ranked business coach for his 2 year period out of a couple hundred coaches. But I ended up in a private meeting with Dean, and he just asked me, he's like, "Hey, do you think you can build this team, build this product, build this program?" And Dean Graziosi and Tony, when they had launched the Knowledge Business Blueprint, and I said, "Yeah, I think I could do that." So 4.5 years later, I was head trainer, director of coaching, director of operations, wore a lot of different hats with Tony and Dean at Mastermind. Had an absolutely incredible experience. And I hit that pivotal moment where, at 4 years in, I remembered something that I always said to myself, which was I would never work for anybody else.
Mhm.
And one of the hardest decisions for me at that moment was there was two major decisions here. Was one, to walk away from a life in the fitness industry, 17 years. I mean, in the entirety of my adult life, I had spent in the fitness industry. So it was utterly terrifying to think about trying anything else. But then to walk away from 4 years working side by side with my superheroes and being surrounded by, some of the most brilliant people in business, from Alex Hormozy to Stu
Oh,
McLaren,
cool.
Dan
Cool.
Martell, I got to share some stages with some really, really incredible people, who, mind you, are all just as amazing behind the scenes as
Mhm.
they are on stage. Like they're all really
Mhm.
incredible humans. But the one thing I'd love to share with the audience too, this is one quick takeaway. So often we have a tendency to put these people on pedestals. I mean, I know I did
Mhm.
at least.
Mhm.
And it's very easy to fall to the illusion that there's something unique or special about them that we
Mhm.
couldn't necessarily ever achieve. And the reality is they're just people. They've just made different decisions than you have.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
we all have the same
Love it.
capacity to
Yeah.
make those decisions. So that's a big one. But that was a major turning point, and I did decide to take a step back and go back into what I did best, which is build my own businesses. So it's back in consulting. I have multiple businesses that I've partnered with or that I consult for, equity ownership. There's a lot of different things that I do. I love to stay busy. But that's my attempt at a short version of my history and background.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. This is amazing journey, dude, what you went through. But I want to go a little bit like backwards a bit.
Mhm.
Um, when it comes to like when you've been just like, put out to like since 17, you've been like literally running a business and even like business in debt. Dude, like how this made you like what was like going on within your head at that time, at that moment that you've been like handed this type of business basically, and like how this is insane to me. Like I'd like what was going on in your head and how you've been dealing with it. Yeah, share that if you can.
Um, maybe there wasn't enough going on in my head, and I think that was part of the thing that allowed me to get through it at that time. I didn't know what I didn't know and
Yeah.
what I was getting into. When I first went to work for the business, I had been going to college, and it was about a year and a half in, and I was just not enjoying it. I just realized very quickly it was not the place for me. And what I find so ironic about it is while I was a terrible student in school,
Uh-huh.
I'm an outstanding student outside of school. I have a
Ooh.
tremendous thirst for information. It's just now I get to pick and
Mm-hmm.
choose where I put my energy and focuses versus being told I have to study something mundane that I'm never going to use. So part of it was a means to an end. Like I was taking a break from college, went to work with my dad. He had an opportunity. He said, "Hey, do you think you can run this place?" And for some reason, I just said, "Sure." I mean, I was like, "Oh yeah, I can sit here and wait for people to come in the door and sell." And because I was modeling what he
Yeah.
did, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
realized really quickly, I'm like, that's and not to slight my dad. It was just he did very well in a past industry, and I realized the practices that he had brought here were not going to work, and so I had to
Mm-hmm.
change some things. But the truth is, it was just a lot of grit and unwillingness to fail. Like I
Mm-hmm.
would not. I mean, there was incredibly hard times. I mean, I remember distinctly sitting on my office floor crying, bawling my eyes out, like wondering how I'm going to pay our rent the next day, our payroll the next day.
Such
We
a
had
lesson.
yeah,
Holy
like
moly.
$10,000 in immediate payables, $30,000 in immediate vendor debt, $800,000 in more global debt, and like 2 grand in the bank account. And I'm like, how the hell am I going to do this? But I found a way. And I think that's the biggest thing is if you maintain that belief that you can, you will, you must find your way through
Mhm.
this, you will always find a way. But what's becomes important is also transforming your mindset from a place of scarcity when it's a place that you've been for so long
Mhm.
into a place of abundance because the brain's going to default back to what it knows. And what
Mhm.
will happen then is if you aren't consciously aware of that, if you're not conditioning these new value systems and beliefs in the way in the
Mhm.
business you want to create, then it's very easy to sabotage yourself back to what you know. And
Mhm.
that might sound ironic, it might sound crazy, but the brain looks for what's familiar, even if it doesn't
Mhm.
like it.
Yep. Yep.
So we have to train it to find the things that we really do want. And sometimes that's a lot of future pacing and conditioning. So all
Mhm.
important things to be mindful of. But that's a little bit of it. I mean, I made a lot of it through by just sheer will and determination. There were countless sleepless nights. There was
Mhm.
many times crying my eyes out of my office floor, wondering what the hell I'm doing or feeling like I had no idea what I was doing. But I found a way. It's
What
will.
what do you mean by finding a way? Tell me about this.
It comes down to the belief that I cannot fail. I have to make
Mhm.
this work. I mean, it wasn't a should, it wasn't a maybe, it was a frick must. Like I had to
Mhm.
find a way to do it. And to me, that was quite literally every part of the business. How do I generate the revenue? How do I
Mhm.
get more customers coming through the door? How do I serve the customers at an even higher level so I generate more repeat business?
What was it?
Uh,
What was the business about actually? I missed heard that.
So that was the specialty fitness retail store where we
Oh, okay. Okay.
sold fitness
Yeah.
equipment, and then the boutique personal training studios where we
Mhm.
did personal training with clients in kind of a high-end luxury environment, so to speak.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. So, just back to what you've been saying. So, you've been figuring out things like how to bring clients, how to,
Marketing,
sales,
sales,
marketing,
leadership, business
right?
operations. I
Everything.
mean, every
You
finance is
you
like,
have
if you
no
don't have,
background at all at
yeah.
that time,
Hmm.
right?
Yep, yep, exactly.
So was that actually like made you to like made you like yeah, I would say made you who you are today? That moment, that time there, the struggle and everything, like who
100%.
actually like
Mhm.
show you in the right light, who you like, and the personality that you are, like the beliefs and everything, and have you
Mhm.
start work like yeah, have you start work like been starting working on those type of things, and that was the way that you actually like find the sales, would you say?
No, I mean, sales started for me at in an even earlier age. I
Hmm.
was, I mean, I don't like to tell the stories often, but one of my first jobs actually was my first job. I was a telemarketer. And there was over 400 people in the company. I was the only one that was, I think, like, I was the youngest person in the company. I was the only one that was working part-time. And within 3 months, even working part-time, I was always tied for the first place seat with as the number one performer, as
Hmm.
the youngest person in the company. And it made me realize that I had a natural gift for communication and influence.
Ooh.
Over
Okay.
time, that evolved
Hmm.
into, some of my core tenets and beliefs, when I'm building a company or a sales team is, I'm always running people through four filters. Like, do they have the skill set or aptitude necessary to be able to perform at a high level? Are they a good fit for the culture that we have or that we are trying to build? Are they a good fit for our ideal client? And do they believe in the product or service? Nothing pisses me off more than a salesperson that's like, oh, I could sell ketchup popsicles to a woman wearing white gloves in the snow. I'm like, that's fantastic, you fucking sleazeball. Like, what you really need to say is, I believe so much in this thing that I'm not going to let you leave this room because of the fact that I know it's going to transform your life. When you have
So
that depth
powerful.
of belief,
Whew.
that's what transforms an experience. That's where your energy shifts. And whether or
Hmm.
not people want to admit, you feel that energy. You feel it when somebody is trying to sell you to put money in their pocket versus serve you at the end of the day. So
Hmm.
sales to me ultimately is service. We are doing people a service. We're helping build the greater good when you really believe in the product or service that you represent. So that belief is really, really important, along with alignment within the people.
This is so powerful. I'm just taking note of this because this is incredible. Very, very cool. Um, so tell me, like, what that moment for you when like been handing something that you have no background, like, what was the things that you had to work on the most? Like, mindset or this, yeah, tell me about that.
All of
All of
it.
it.
I mean, it was just
Like,
it is
how,
all of
yeah,
it, but remember, this is 17 years,
yep,
right? So
yep.
there's always, like anything in life, you'll have a different focus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, there's going to be things that compartmentalize, that draw more of your attention at that point in time based on need or necessity. So at certain points it was leadership, from a more global perspective, getting more into the minutia. Sometimes I was just, how do you properly run a freaking meeting? Like, I distinctly remember running meetings and feeling like we had this incredibly dynamic conversation. There's all this stuff up on the whiteboard, and then we come back a week later and nothing got done.
Mm-hmm.
And, it sounds so trite, but it's true. So many times companies are running these meetings, but they're not leaving with an execution plan or strategy. It's okay, we did a great job brainstorming. Now, who is responsible for what? What are the specific deadlines with which they have to have certain tasks or things accomplished and submitted by? It was just those little things, in many cases, that I wasn't doing or wasn't doing
Mm-hmm.
properly, that took a long time to figure out. I mean, they seem so stupid at this point, so obvious, but for most of us, they're not, especially when you're trying to analyze yourself in business. So,
Mm-hmm.
it was everything from those aspects of leadership to, like I say, marketing and sales development. And, mind you, our company had like really four different major verticals. I mean, we had residential product sales, which is retail in store. We had commercial product sales, which is all outbound. I mean, I was working with government facilities, municipalities, your schools, your hospitals, apartment complexes, oil refineries and tankers. Like,
Yep.
we did a lot of different stuff, but that's inbound, outbound. We
Mm-hmm.
had the service division where we're delivering and setting up and repairing the equipment. And then we had our personal training studios. So they all required different sales strategies and
Mm-hmm.
processes. And,
Mm-hmm.
I was so good at it naturally
Mm-hmm.
that that was one thing. But if you try to scale, you can't scale something you're good at naturally. You
Mm-hmm.
have to build processes around it. So then
Mm-hmm.
I had to go out and build processes so that I could put other people in place so that I could actually effectively grow the business and not
Nail
stay
it.
stuck or
Yep.
stagnant.
Yep. 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 So you said, like, what was okay? Let me reframe that question. Like, what was the hardest piece when it comes to, like, for example, because all everybody knows that when we starting a business, most of the time, like, most of the people have such a big struggle with mindset because, like, mindset is like 80% or 90% of the whole success, right? Because if you are not if you're not becoming the person, or you're not going to become the person, you are not unable to do the thing and have the thing. Most of the people have it the backward, right? They see something that most of the, like, some people have, and then they thinking that they're gonna do stuff to have it, but that's not how it works, right? And it's even in line with God purpose, how he, like, what he. It's so interesting. Anyway, this tied. It's really tied together with this. My beliefs and so on. Anyway, but. So, what was your have you been always like confident this way, or like when you get there
No.
for, yeah, tell
No.
me, tell me about this story. Like, yeah, how did you
Dude, I
actually
mean,
like,
I was the kid that was mortified to speak in front of his high school classroom, let alone get on a stage. So I mean, me going from that mindset to being on Tony Robbins stage in Florida in front of 20,000 people. I mean, one of the biggest stages in the world. Like that's a major transformation. And don't get me wrong, I was still nervous before I went out, but nothing like, I mean, it was more excitement than it was nerves. So a lot of it was transforming the belief around,
mm,
why I wanted to speak, what it meant, what I mean. And here's the simple reality. If you're nervous before you're going to give a presentation, before you get in front of a room, before you step foot on a stage, who are you focused on?
hmm
Yourself.
So yeah, myself, yeah,
And
yeah,
if I'm focused on myself, then I'm focused on the wrong thing. Like I have to focus on who I'm there for, which is really the audience, the
yeah,
people that you're there to serve and impact.
yeah.
And that one simple reframe in and of itself was very transformative. But it started before that for me. When
Hmm.
we early on we expanded and moved into and this is one example, and then I'm going to go step actually before that. Um, when we launched our boutique personal training studios, one of our first clients owned one of the largest businesses in town,
Hmm.
and he said, "Zach, hey, we're starting this new wellness initiative. I would love you to be the first speaker." And
Hmm.
again, at this stage, I'm still terrified to speak, I for some reason I said yes, and I'll never forget this experience because I'm in like one of his lower offices. There's about 100 people in the room, whiteboards. I'm up there shaking as I'm writing, sweat's pouring down my face. I'm
Yeah.
like radioactive red. But the thing I'll never forget was people's faces after I wrapped up.
Ooh.
The conversations that happened after. And not only that day, but for days, weeks, even months later, I would run into the employees on the sidewalk and they'd be like, dude, I just implemented this thing that you told me, this recommendation you made
Mhm.
about water. I tweaked my fitness plan based on this. And they were like, now I have more energy. I'm sleeping like I've never slept before, whatever the thing was, right? And in that moment, something started to shift. I'm like,
Mhm.
this is why people love to do this. I
Mhm.
get it now. It's the
Mhm.
impact. I get to share something that I've invested all this time and energy into building expertise around and help transform people's lives. Instead of having to do it one at a time, now I can change 50 at once,
Mhm.
100 at once, 20,000 at once. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So part of it was that experience that I had to go through and face that fear
Mhm.
because what you resist persists. And, was mindset always there for me? No. I mean, I think like for many people around my age, I think my first introduction to mindset, if we want to generalize the term, was The Secret with oh my
Mhm.
gosh, his name's escaping me now. I love him. Um,
You mean the book, right? The Secret.
yeah,
Yep. Yep.
John Assaraf. Yeah,
Okay.
John Assaraf, The Secret. And I'll never forget, like my brother, when the video came out, my brother and I watched it every single day for like
Ooh,
90
okay.
days,
Yep.
thinking that life was going to transform, but it's not quite that simple.
Uh-huh.
But that
Uh-huh.
was my introduction to personal development and behavioral
Uh-huh.
psychology and learning a little, like, dipping your toe into water with quantum physics and stuff. And from there, it just began this snowball. I became
Mhm.
thirsty, and a lot of it was driven by pain, as in the moments of the greatest challenges that you're always looking for solutions. Um, I think it's also important to remember that it's really easy. I like this quote.
Mhm.
When people succeed, they tend to party. When they
Mhm.
fail, they tend to ponder.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important that we remember that just because things are going well in the moment, that doesn't mean they're going to be tomorrow.
Mhm.
So it's just as important to keep your foot on the gas, continue to be evolving as a person, challenging your own belief systems, ensuring that everything is staying in alignment. Because if we're not asking those questions, nobody's going to do it for you.
Mhm.
So, constant and never-ending improvement,
Yeah.
perpetual growth. Like I host a podcast too, the Perpetual Growth Podcast. And that's one of the basic premises. We
Mhm.
have 4 or 5 major categories of life: health, wealth, relationships, spirituality. Of course, there's subcategories within each. And I love to meet and explore and talk to other experts in each of these areas and learn what makes them great, what makes their mind tick, and bring the
Mhm.
whole thing
So
together.
powerful. So
Mhm.
powerful. When you said that, constantly like working on mindset and so on, like, and you said that, just consuming content, would somebody put it out there, is not going to make the whole, like, the biggest shift. So what would you say that the biggest shift actually like made the biggest shift in your life?
One, do the work. A lot of people
Mhm.
listen, but they don't actually do the exercises, the activities that are by design, the thing that's going to help you break through the next level, bring awareness to where you're at, and help illustrate where you want to go. So that's one thing. The second is nothing trumps an experience.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's the times when I made an investment to get out of my office, to get
Yep.
out of my building, to get out of my home, and go somewhere where I'm completely immersed in an environment for 3, 5, 7 days. And all I'm doing is focusing on building myself
Mm-hmm.
on, and whether that's from a mindset standpoint, from a business standpoint, relationship health, in whatever context, there's the power of immersion is not to be overlooked or understated.
Mm-hmm.
Take any opportunity you can to immerse yourself in an environment to focus on one thing to get better, and you will experience breakthroughs. But you
Mm-hmm.
got to do the work. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're not doing the work, it's one thing to be a consumer. It's another thing to be somebody that is actively utilizing those tools.
Yeah.
We have to use them.
Yeah. Yeah. So powerful. So and so true. Like I'm consistently like kind of I'm saying like I'm brainwashing myself like
Hmm.
consistently.
Hmm.
And then also like I'm like a huge consumer. Like I'll consume so much information, so much content because I love studying.
Hmm.
And working on execution more than before at the beginning because I've been terrified to actually do the things that are uncomfortable for me, I would say. But I'm like, since biggest shift happened for me when I realized because my roadblock, the biggest roadblock that I had in my life was that I've been always looking at others, what they think about me.
Hmm.
And when I realized that, not realized, I read a scripture about, when it comes to God. And he created us the way that we are, who we are. We are that
Hmm.
we are, like, I am that I am, right? That
Hmm.
realization overtook the belief of like that some I have to be liked and so on. No, I has to be just myself, right? And from there, I just start doing the work as much as I can, and it's so fulfilling, so amazing to be out there and working with people, and helping others. Just even this podcast is just so amazing to be connected with so many amazing humans and just talking and sharing ideas and listening their stories, and it's just insane, right? And that happened all when I actually step out from that believing that I'm not enough or somebody put something on like some label on me and it just I went there and just started doing it. So I love what you said with the mindset and how like how you overcome those things and what you like consistently you have to like brainwashing because the mindset is so important when it comes to like business and everything like what is even in normal life even in your like relationship and everywhere, right? So, but let me go back to like there was an additional question I wanted to ask about what was your like when you've been child, when you've been when you've been growing up, what was the success actually supposed to look like for you? Like what was the script that you've been handed that like by parents or the environment that you've been growing up, what was it like for you?
Hmm. That's an interesting question. You know, That's hard for me to define. I mean, if I had to just look at it superficially, I would say big house on the water, boat, ability to travel, plenty of money to do
Yeah,
the things that
yeah.
you want to do. I mean, that was a lot of the environment I grew up in. I was very lucky, um, on one hand, but I also watched my parents lose like the
Mhm.
majority of the wealth they built.
Yeah.
So I saw both ends of the spectrum, and lived through it too. So, and that was always, I mean, and still is like one of my greatest fears is,
Mhm.
not repeating the sins of the father, right? The same mistakes.
Ooh. Mhm.
And so, I mean, I think it's really important to be mindful of that narrative, but even more, we have to become masters of pattern recognition
Mhm.
because,
Mhm.
how often is it in life where you've thought back, and I guarantee you, I mean, this is not a unique thought. Like
Mhm.
everybody listening will have thought this thought at some point. Why do I keep doing that?
Mhm.
Why do I keep making the same mistakes? Why do I keep dating the same type of man or woman?
Mhm.
How do the relationships always end up the same? Why can't I control my health? Why do I continue to feed my face every night when I know I shouldn't? Why am I watching TV? And so the main point is we have to identify both the patterns that hold us back and then the ones that propel us forward. Do more of what works, do less of what doesn't. Trite but true. But it all starts with awareness. If you're not aware of the things that you don't like that are happening in your life, you're bound to repeat them
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
we're not challenging the belief systems that brought us there to begin with. I mean, sometimes the greatest growth that I've experienced in business didn't come through business. It came through focusing on my relationship. Like,
Ooh.
why was,
Hmm.
how is it that I'm recreating these same patterns with my significant other? My wife and I have been together for 10 years.
Hmm.
Um, and there was a lot of introspection, a lot of things I had to work through. And, most people think that it's the other person that's the problem. Well, one, we know it superficially, but we don't usually admit it ourselves. But we co-create these relationships.
Hmm.
And a lot of the problems are also being manifested by the way you look at them. And
Hmm.
that's life, health, business, friendships. I mean, in any compartment of life. So, biggest thing is identify the patterns. What are the ones you like? What are the ones you don't? And if you
Hmm.
don't like it, challenge it. Start asking more powerful questions. What don't I like about this? What would I need to change? Why is that important to me? You know, Tony teaches a process called RPM,
Hmm.
result, purpose, outcome. Start with the outcome. What is the end result that you want? Then move back to the why. Why is this important to me? And then you move on to how. Most people try to start with how before they've clearly defined what they want and why it's important to them. And then what happens? They get stuck in the tyranny of how. They
Hmm.
can't figure it out without a clear North Star that's guiding them, helping them determine what steps are most likely to help them get there.
Hmm.
So forget how, sometimes it's who, but forget how and start with what you want. Get ultra clear on that, why it's important to you, why it's a must to have in your life, and then how will follow. And I think that's a component of faith. I think it's a component of spiritual growth. I think it's a component of personal growth is the learning to surrender.
Hmm.
Just because you've gotten clear on what you want doesn't mean you're going to snap your fingers and have it tomorrow.
Hmm.
Every problem, every challenge is being presented to you by design. And that's their simple reality. Just because we see these other really successful people doesn't mean life's all sunshine and rainbows. 9 times out of 10, it's not. It's those challenges that create contrast that make the beauty in life.
Yep.
Without the problems, we wouldn't have all the great stuff to appreciate. But problems suck. And at the same time, they're a sign of life. And when you learn to start to surrender to those problems and recognize that God, the universe, whatever your belief system is presenting them by design to help you reach your next level, now you can transform that experience. A problem's never a problem unless you decide to stay there, unless you continue to
Hmm.
make the same mistakes over and over. But when you can learn and evolve,
Hmm.
that's when real change starts to happen.
Yeah, yeah. This is so good. Oh my gosh, this is so good conversation. Love it so much. Um, when you okay, when you said uh that we have to like, are you saying that we have to be like really intentional in like pretty much every area of our life, what we do and how we live our life to be able to see what we like where we do mistake kind of mistakes, like I would say. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly. And like questioning like the way we believe things and do like to be like to actually be really aware of like um if we are taking the right steps to the goal that we are heading to.
Let me try and illustrate it this way. So, one, there's no right or wrong. Like,
Hmm.
if we're trying to find the right steps, you're never going to find them.
Uh-huh.
Whatever path you're on is the path that you're supposed to be on.
Uh-huh.
And that's one simple point in reality. People were like, a lot of people say things like, "Oh man, I wish I would have found this years ago." Wouldn't have mattered if you found it years ago. You wouldn't have been ready. You're
Hmm.
finding the thing. You're being presented with the challenge, the knowledge, the wisdom, the learning, whatever the thing is right now, because it's when you were supposed to meet it. But
Hmm.
what you do next is what's most important. And here's a simple reality: do you have to be intentional? Yes, 100%. And do you need to be 100% of the time? Pretty much. Because if you're not, here's the way I look at it: I'm either writing my own story or somebody else is writing it for me. Do you want to be the one writing the narrative, or do you want to be
Hmm.
living somebody else's? And the
Hmm.
simple reality is, if you aren't making those decisions consciously, then somebody else is telling your story.
Hmm. Hmm.
I want to be the one that's driving the ship.
Love
I
it.
want to be the one that is deciding where we are going and next. And there's a duality to that. There's dichotomies in every part of life and business. But do you need to be aware and consciously making those decisions? Yes. And then one of the dichotomies is you have to surrender to what happens next. And if it's where you're supposed to go, challenges, things will be presented that you have to overcome in order to get there, or you'll be presented with something new. And that's where
Hmm.
you've got to trust the wisdom that comes through God of the universe and that speaks to you. The gut
Hmm.
are gut instincts. Like when you listen to that,
Hmm.
that voice is never wrong. Most people
Hmm.
just aren't listening to what their body, their mind, their heart, spirit is trying to tell them.
Hmm. This is so powerful, dude. I'm loving it so much. This is so much value. Uh, you know, when it comes to like the way that you see the world now and how you operate, like how does it differentiate and what is the major um what was the major changes that you can see you had to you had to unlearn or learn to actually become this type of person?
Well, I'm always learning, so I'm never there. I mean, that's
Mhm.
a really, really big one.
That's
Is
so
it's
good
like,
also. Yeah,
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 I
yeah,
mean, there is no fixed point. We're on a
yeah.
continuum.
I love
So
I love the saying, the journey is the destination.
yeah, 100%.
Right.
And till the day my feet are on the ground, we're on that journey. So,
Hmm.
to me, if you're still here, regardless of what life circumstance or challenge or thing you're dealing with, you have unfulfilled potential.
Hmm.
There's something left, an impact that you are supposed to make.
Hmm.
If you are still here, you have unfulfilled potential.
Hmm.
So that's a really big one. I mean, for me early on, and every decade has a different obstacle to overcome. I mean, early on, it was death of the ego. Like and I'm not going to say that it ever dies, but you have to learn to start to look outside of yourself. And it was
Hmm.
also going from I need to achieve, 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 Mach 10 with my hair on fire for 17 years, hyperfixated and focused on business and nothing else. That at some point you realize God wants more from you
Hmm.
than
Hmm.
just to focus on business. You know, kids dramatically changed my
Hmm.
life perspective.
Hmm.
Like, uh, my kids are one of the greatest gifts in the world, and they challenge you every single day. Like, you 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 want the best mirror. Look at your kids. Like, they will tell you exactly what you need to know about yourself and what you need for growth now. So kids are a beautiful gift. Death of the ego was incredibly important. Um, and I mean, that's a perpetual battle. You're always fighting ego on some level or another. But learning to realize that it's something bigger than you, you know, find what you really love. Like, there's so much talk about skills. Like, yeah, find that thing, the one thing that you're good at and develop that thing to no end. Yeah, there's some truth to that. Find that one thing that you're passionate about and pursue that thing to no end. There's a lot of truth to that. But you also, ironically, have to be open to new things that are being presented to you. You might have a greater calling. There might be stuff that you're the best in the world at, but there's something you could be even better at. Like, and we get so stuck on what the world says we should be doing, what our environment
Hmm.
says we should be doing, what the next coach says we should be doing. But most people aren't listening to the most important person in the room, which is themselves. Like, what do you want?
Yeah.
We don't take the time to ask that question. People are so busy trying to accomplish and achieve that they forget about this moment is the last and only moment you will ever experience this.
Hmm.
This is it. I will never get to experience this moment again. So are you finding joy in this moment, regardless of what you're going through?
Yeah.
And that's important. So death of the ego, constant never-ending improvement. Most of the time it starts with me, and in reality it shifts to we.
Hmm.
Like, it's we over me, you know? Not getting hyper fixated on one part of life, but really looking at the wheel of the life and how do you find more harmony,
Hmm.
not balance. I hate that word balance. It's not about balance. There's no such thing as balance. Like, I look
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
every aspect of life as like a ping pong match or tennis match. Or pendulum. We're constantly swinging in and out of range, and we're just trying to narrow that margin so we're staying closer to the center line. But
Hmm.
when things get out of range, when you're experiencing discomfort or dis-ease in any context, it's a sign that something needs to shift.
Hmm.
And you either shift the way that you're looking at that thing, is
Hmm.
the problem really an opportunity? Or you shift the environment that you're in. If this
Hmm.
environment's not healthy, then change it. And that might sound overly simplistic, but it's truth. We all have that control, but it's one that we don't execute more often than not. And then there's the illusion of control. There is no such thing.
No.
We're never in control. So as
Yeah.
soon as we can adopt that mentality and surrender to it, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I have no kids yet. but when you start talking about it, this is like for me, it's so like so personal because like me growing up in the environment that I haven't been able to have like the presence of my parents and so on, that is like one of the biggest driving source for me to be actually able to be present for my kids and being able to actually like support them every way possible. Um, and yeah, this is just you're amazing, dude. I love this conversation. You are awesome, and I'm sure that kids has to be proud of you. You know who you are, who you become, what sacrifice you did, and like how you literally like what the journey made you as a person. Because this is loving it so much. Um, and also I see are you a fan of Marvel or something?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
usually I have my Iron Man ring on too, but today I don't.
That's so cool. Why I mean, I have a question. Why
Hmm?
you like why Iron Man actually?
Yeah, I love that question. So Thor was a gift. He was not my choice to put up
Yeah,
there, but some of the old team used
yeah.
to call me Thor. So Iron Man and Thor were the things I used to get called.
Okay.
Um, but for me, it's more the metaphor. And I mean, what I
Mm,
love about Iron Man is he wasn't born a god. He wasn't born with any like physical superpowers, but his greatest superpower was his mind.
mm.
And
And
I think
that's
that's true for all of
powerful.
us.
Ah,
But we
this
have
is
to
so
find that
powerful. Yeah.
that sweet spot, right? But
Uh-huh.
what I also love is his journey.
Mm-hmm.
He starts as the brilliant but egotistical playboy that's completely selfish and self-centered and everything's about him. And as you go through the journey, the brilliance never dies, but the ego does.
Mm-hmm.
And he
Ah, yeah, I
transforms
have
from playboy to
goosebumps, dude.
father,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to making the ultimate sacrifice for the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really the metaphor and the journey and what it represents. I mean, that's what I like about him is the
Mm-hmm.
growth.
Mm-hmm. And Thor? Are
I
you a
love
fan of
Thor. I mean, I think he's a stud and a superhero, but it was just the team used to call me Thor, so somebody got me Thor's hammer
Yeah.
all the time. I either was called Iron Man or Thor, depending on which team I was working with. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very,
yeah.
very cool. Love it so much, dude. So I would love to ask you the question that you basically like come out with, and am I right? That was the question, like, why are you doing this? Or like, what is that was a question, super powerful question. I haven't catch it. I didn't wrote it down, but you had a question like that most of the people are not really know what they kind of want in their life or what they like why they doing what they like why they choose to go this way, I would
Mhm.
say.
You got to know what you want and why you want. I mean, the simple reality is if you don't know what you want, if you don't have a
Mm-hmm.
clear target destination, if you don't know what you want in a relationship, what's an absolute must and what you will not tolerate, how are you ever going to find a great relationship? You're
Mm-hmm.
leaving everything to chance or falling to somebody else's narrative. So you got to get clear in every part of life. What do I want? What does the best, most intimate, incredible relationship look like for you? What does a phenomenal career look like for you? What does
Mm-hmm.
outstanding health look like for you? What does a deep integrated connection with my creator look like for you? I mean, you have to, what does it mean to be a great parent for you? Do you want to
Mm-hmm.
be a parent? Like, and there's no judgment. It's really just defining the things that you want. Because if you don't have clear targets and things that you are aspiring toward, then how the hell are you ever going to get there? And it comes back
Mm-hmm.
to what I said is you're either writing your own story or you're living in somebody else's. So
Yep. Yep.
without taking the time to define that and create that clarity, then you're living in somebody else's story.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to get clear and then allow things to unfold. And then you got to check in because guess what? Things change.
Mm-hmm.
What you want now, or 3 months from now, or a year from now, or particularly 10, are likely to be very, very different things.
Mm-hmm.
Like I used to work 10, 12, 14, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, 100-hour weeks. Like it was freaking crazy. And I wore it like a badge of honor. I mean, I went 7 years without taking more than a 3-day weekend. Now I'm like, you idiot. What the hell were you thinking? How much you sacrificed? I wouldn't trade it for anything. However, my perspective shifted. Now what's more important to me than anything is A, recognizing that one, I can create the financial success I want without running myself into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
B, my kids are the most important. Like I try not to work on Monday or Friday. Sounds crazy. I have a 3-ish day work week. Some days it's 4, some days it's 5, but I usually intentionally block Monday and Friday, and I work if it's something that I want to do, if it's something that's really important to me. Otherwise, I'm spending extra time with my family, my kids, and equally as important with myself.
Mhm.
That was another thing that I had not done for a very long time was just spend time loving me. Like,
Mhm.
what do I want to do? What
Mhm.
brings me joy? Am
Mhm.
I taking time to go on a hike, go get out the golf clubs and hit the course with a friend or grab coffee with a buddy? Like I was so focused on achieving that I had let so much stuff slip by unless I had integrated it with business. And now I'm more intentional about separating these things and creating more focus and space, and life's a lot better.
So cool, so cool. How you how you actually like leading your kids from like that is different. Is it different than you've been like when you've been raised? Or you like
Yes and no. I mean, remember how I talked about earlier, like the patterns where you're like, God dang it,
Mhm.
like why do I do that? I mean, there's plenty of times where I'm like, shit, that's my dad.
Uh-huh. Hmm.
And there's power in that too. When you recognize that it's not you, you can
Hmm.
start to detach and dissociate from it. So A is catch the condition that you don't like, and then B, determine how you want to show up in that scenario and start recreating those patterns. I mean, we have to interrupt the pattern that got us there to begin with.
Hmm.
So do I parent like my parents? Yes. Do I parent like my parents? No. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I do very differently. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to break down what each of those things are specifically,
Hmm.
um, but there's a lot of parallels and there's a lot of things that are very, very different. But I'm constantly trying to evolve as a parent too. I mean, who I was a parent from my first to my third child is very different, a very different person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's an evolution that happens there too. And they're also 3 different kids. I mean, you can't
Have
parent
you
them the
been
same.
preparing yourself actually for when kids came, or have you been like just that
No,
came
no.
and then you've been like figuring out everything, like pretty much like a business, right?
Pretty much,
So
yeah. The kids
interesting.
don't come with a playbook, and behavioral psychology changes, and there's polarity to everything. One person says A, the other person says Z. Like it just, you have to figure out what works for you and what feels congruent with your belief systems
Hmm.
and values. And I think lead with that and integrity, staying in integrity as much as absolutely possible, which nobody's perfect. I mean, I think that's the easiest thing is like it's so easy to make a mistake and then start beating yourself up for it, but what good does that do? It's like I can either beat myself up from it or I can try and learn and be better next time and use it as an opportunity to take ownership and show the kids what that looks like and what it looks like to make a repair attempt. And so I'm take ownership over the mistake, show them the wisdom and being able to honestly apologize and how to apologize and then shift your belief systems and stuff so that you show up better next time. Um, so constant, never-ending improvement. And I think the biggest thing though is it comes back to you can't parent like I don't have a parenting plan. Like all 3 of my kids are different humans and they all need me to show up differently.
Hmm.
So parents that fuck up the most, frankly, are the ones that try to treat all their kids the exact same, but they're
Hmm.
3 different people. Like, so we have to become adept at, learning their human condition, what makes them unique, and help them grow and evolve and support the things that, bring them the most joy too.
Yeah, yeah. Dude, respect you so much. Like 3 kids, running a business, doing so much. You are awesome, dude. Love it so much. Thank you so much for being here. I would wrap it up over here. And before, oh yeah, I have a last question for you that I'm
Shoot.
asking usually all of those
Mhm.
this like all of those guests over here, and that is that if this would be your last interview you would ever
Mhm.
done, what would be your
Mhm.
message to people?
That's a really good question. Hmm. I, for whatever reason, the message is coming to me is life doesn't stop. Why would you?
Hmm.
You know, and I think it ties back to the one thing I shared earlier, where you're either writing your story or you're living in somebody else's.
Hmm.
And it's all a choice. So what do you want to do next? I mean, regardless of how shitty things are, regardless of how, you know, overwhelming something may feel, how insurmountable the circumstance might be, how can you find joy in this moment? How can you get even more clear on the life that you want to have? And what's one small step, no matter how small, that you can take to start moving a new direction? A 1 millimeter shift compounded takes you a completely different direction. So, what small shifts can you start making today that'll transform the person that you become tomorrow?
So powerful. Thank you so much, dude. Where people can find you, support you, connect with you.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's the Zac Palmer, TheZacPalmer. You can find me on Instagram at the Zac Palmer. You can find my website. I bet you guessed it, thezacpalmer.com. So anything, if you look for the Zac Palmer, Zacpalmer, you'll be able to find me and reach out.
Awesome. And for everybody who's listening, if there's something new, don't ignore it. Share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe, leave a review, and remember, you weren't born to follow the script. You were born to be free. Bye, everybody.